there's something dodgy going on. And I feel like that's going to come out. I feel like 2025 we're going to see the downfall of Reform UK. I feel like their moment of glory is not going to last very long. There is something going on. There is something going on, and as I say, I can't pinpoint it right now, but something is going to happen. Something dodgy will come out about kind of the inner workings of it, or like one of the backers, or like a investor or something is going to come out about them that's going to make everyone go, whoa, why did we support them? Hey guys, yeah, I think some of you owe me an apology because when I made my prediction at the beginning of this year saying there was going to be some sort of scandal that would bring down the reputation of Reform UK, there were naysayers. There were the people in the comments section defending Reform UK till the day they died. No, this party's going to be the saviour of the UK, this is exactly what we need, you're talking rubbish, and now look. Call me a wizard because I fucking called it. Welcome back to Playing in Politics. We have a lot to cover today. I'm sure you're aware of some of the stuff that's been happening, but we're going to lay out the timeline of everything that's gone on in regards to the suspension of Rupert Lowe, and all of the lies and scandal and deceit and bullshit that's been going on around this topic. If you're new to my channel, hello, my name's Anna. This is Playing in Politics, which is my makeup and politics podcast, where basically I talk about politics and I do my makeup at the same time. It's like the Bailey Sarian, and this time without the murder, because the past few episodes we've been talking about wars and Ukraine and things like that. But today, no death, just a lot of scandal. So yeah, as I say, there were naysayers when I made this prediction, and I've said this quite a few times on my channel, but when it comes to Reform UK, if you guys don't know, I am still a member of the Conservative Party. I didn't vote for Kemi though, and we've been holding our heads in our hands as members of the Conservative Party, basically saying like, oh, this is, you know, the end of our party, we're really struggling, especially since Kemi got voted in as leader, and Reform UK have been, so far, quite a big opposition to us because they're a new party, they were saying all the right things, they were getting, you know, a lot of supporters, and then they overtook the membership of the Conservative Party, and we're going to talk about all that today because obviously things have changed, and some perspectives have changed, things have been said that have brought some truth to light here, and I always thought this was going to happen because, as I've said quite a few times on the channel, I have never trusted Reform UK. I didn't trust it when Richard Tice was leader, and as much as when Nigel Farage became the leader, or at least the owner of the company that is Reform UK, and we're going to talk about that, when he became leader, at that time I was still a supporter of Nigel Farage, and I thought, yay, this is a good thing. It's good that he's come back to frontline politics because, you know, he's always said stuff in the past that has been common sense that we all agreed with, right? But again, like many things that we're going to talk about in this video, that has changed. So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's talk about the shock that was this news coming out. Now, Rupert Lowe, obviously, the party doesn't have that many MPs. And the other one that is most notable apart from Rupert Lowe is Lee Andrson, and this was kind of the shock when this all came out, was that he'd signed this statement saying that Rupert Lowe had been suspended and had his whip removed based on some allegations of bullying and derogatory comments towards some of the female staff in his office, or at least that's how it was phrased originally, right? Everyone lost their shit, obviously, because Rupert Lowe has always been a very sensible and common sense figure. Now, I'll hold my hands up and say, as much as I knew his name and I knew he was decent, I didn't know an awful lot of the details about Rupert Lowe, as much as, like, yeah, he stands up for what we all try and fight for over here, and yeah, he was just a good voice for the right, or at least kind of that's what we thought, because we all thought that the Reform Party was kind of the newer wave of right-wing politics, right? And the conservative politics that we need in this country, right? And obviously we've discussed in the past all of the weirdness around Reform UK being like a limited company and it not really being a proper political party, and you know, we've talked about them on the channel before, but overall, you know, as I said at the beginning, they've been an opposition and a challenge to the Conservative Party because they were trying to come up with all of like the solutions to the problems that the Tories were weren't willing to address or weren't coming up with good policies for, right? It's interesting because Kemi Badenoch's come out with like a tweet recently, which is something to do with some kind of policy. I can't remember what it is, but somebody was praising it for it actually being a policy. So maybe things are going to change, okay, over there. But when it comes to the Conservative Party, I still don't have a lot of faith as long as Kemi's leader, I still don't really have a lot of faith in the party anyway. But yeah, so when this all came out, as I say, it was a shock because we all thought that Rupert was one of the popular ones, and unfortunately this is a case of same shit, different day, because I've been saying this since Ben Habib got suspended in a similar way and got his name sort of tried to drag his name through the mud. And this is a similar thing, you know, I'm sad to say, but, well, I'm not really sad to say, this is incredibly vindicating for me, considering like the lack of trust I had in them, really. Yeah, it's been interesting to see just how similar these two cases are, and as I say, when everything happened about Ben Habib, that's when my support for them started to waver. But I talked about this in a previous episode, but when Kemi got voted in as leader, me and a friend of mine were seriously considering moving over to Reform UK. And since then, that friend of mine has had further temptations to move over there because he's a councillor, and a lot of the Conservative group were thinking of just doing like a mass jump over. That hasn't happened, and I don't know if it will, especially after everything that's happened, but I'm yet to kind of talk to him about that. But as I say, yeah, I was also, you know, in the realm of being tempted to move over, but then everything came out about Ben Habib, and obviously I've never really trusted Reform, as I've said before, so it was also like the previous suspicions of wrongdoing and dodgy dealings and just not great stuff happening just in general, right? So when that happened with Ben Habib, you know, that was vindicating as well, because that also proved that I was right to be suspicious. And I thought, well, it's only a matter of time, as I mentioned in the beginning of this year when I made my predictions video, that yeah, I reckon that something's gonna happen because I don't trust them, and I think that after what happened with Ben Habib, something else is gonna happen. They're gonna do a similar thing to somebody else, or just something. In fact, I don't even think I really made like a solid sort of plan prediction. I just said that like some scandal's gonna happen with Reform UK that's going to diminish their reputation, and I don't think I even really knew what that was gonna be. Maybe in the back of my head I thought it was gonna be something similar to what they did with Ben, which has obviously been the case here. But yeah, it's just been interesting to see how similar those two cases are. So yeah, as I say, it was all to do with these allegations that came out against Rupert Lowe. At least, as I said, that's how it was framed originally, which, as we know now, not the case, and we're going to talk about that. And again, you know, if I see any more of like the brainwashed gremlins in my comment section who will have Vote Reform UK written on their tombstones when they die, right? I don't want to hear it, because you've got to wake up and smell the roses. You've got to look at what is happening around you. You've got to look at what is happening inside the party, the type of people they are supporting, the kind of like stuff they're coming out and saying, and the stuff that they're saying about Rupert Lowe, especially with them accusing him of like being like too right-wing for them, even though he's only against mass deportations the same way that everyone else should be, right? So again, you've really got to be objective here, okay? And this is coming from a Tory. Look at what the majority of Tory members are saying at the moment about their party. Look how objective we're being about the fact that our party's in a mess and how dissatisfied we are with the state of the party, right? You've got to have the same attitude about Reform UK. You can't start crying at every piece of constructive criticism that somebody throws their way. You know, you can't have the same attitude as the leaders, because that's exactly what they have done in this case. And as we might remember, the reason, like, the timing of all this is really fascinating, especially with them claiming all these like allegations were made on like what, the 13th of December or something, and it took them this long to then go like he started to question Nigel Farage's authority, so maybe we should now kick him out, you know, because we can't have constructive criticism. We can't have anybody saying anything remotely bad about the party. We have to remain an echo chamber. We have to feed into cancel culture, even though that's something we claim to be against, and we have to just destroy anybody who's not a yes man, and that's exactly what is happening here. Now obviously, as I'm sure we remember, when this all came out, Rupert Lowe did not hesitate to call everything out, and it has been good to see him do that. Obviously, you know, we got to see people stand up and defend themselves, and it was again really similar to what Ben Habib did when they treated him in the same way, which also shows just how solid they are as people, and like how much more trustworthy they are in comparison to Richard Tice and Nigel Farage. And it was even more interesting the fact that the KCs had come out and basically said like, oh, this is shocking, like we didn't know about this, like all these allegations that we had no idea, right? And then it's come out later that those allegations weren't even made directly at Rupert Lowe, right? I think Andrew Bridgen, who I'm sure we all remember as a former MP, he was a former Tory MP, then he got suspended and he was an independent for a while, if I remember rightly, but he knew the woman who is like involved in the allegations because I think she used to be one of his staffers and then she went to work for Rupert Lowe, and she even said herself that like, oh yeah, no, those comments weren't at Rupert, like I'm shocked that they're trying to make it out like that's the case. I was making them against another member of staff in his office, right? Which is just one level of how ludicrous this all is, right? And really started to expose just how much of a stitch up this whole situation is. And again, you know, I said this before, it is so incredibly similar to the type of stuff that they tried to do with Ben Habib, which, as much as it has been scandalous and really sad to see this happen to him, as somebody who, you know, as I said before, I've never really trusted them and thought something like this would happen, it feels incredibly vindicating. So of course, right, the questions started to be asked of like, okay, well why is this really happening? Of course, he started to question Nigel Farage's leadership and he started to have, you know, some questions about how it was run. Obviously, we were told that it was going to become a political party and no longer a limited company, right? Obviously, that is not the case. If you know, you know, but Nigel Farage and Zia Youssef, who was the chairman, not the elected chairman, he's a businessman, he was just brought in, he was a former Tory donor who was brought in to, I guess, donate to the Reform Party, and then Nigel Farage was like, oh, we like how much money you're giving us, come be the chairman. Like that, like it's giving nominating your bestie to be in the House of Lords. It's the same energy, right? And yeah, it has come to light now that it is still a limited company. It's just dual ownership, like it's not even a party. And to be fair, I think I might have said in a previous podcast episode that like, oh yeah, they've become a political party now, and I apologise for that because that is completely false. That has not happened yet, and really that just exposes another level of disorganisation, dishonesty, and why I don't trust them. So as I say, everything started to be like, the questions started to be asked about why this actually happened. Why all of a sudden did they turn against him? Because yes, of course, as I said, he was starting to question how the party was run, but perhaps like the stagnation of the party, why they haven't taken any real action, right? However, since all this has come out, and obviously Tice and Farage have been questioned about this by the press, and as much as initially the whole allegations of the statement, everything was made by Lee Andrson and Zia Youssef, we were obviously waiting for Tice and Farage to make their statements, okay? And Farage came out and obviously agreed that, yeah, we're not letting him back in the party. Richard Tice went on GB News and he was being interviewed by, can't remember her name. I should remember her name, she's brilliant. She does like the Sunday shows where she interviews politicians. I'm gonna have to remember her name. Camilla Tomley, that's it. She was on the Camilla Tomley show, and obviously she was asking the questions as she does. She's brilliant. Immediately he was jumping in, you know, she was asking the question about, you know, what if this is all cleared, are you gonna let him back in the party? And he's immediately like, listen, we need to be getting on with the job. You know, we have hundreds of seats to win in May. We need to stay united and, you know, get on with the job. The usual career politician type bump, right? Which, again, is just like snake in the grass, like traitor energy. It's not surprising, it's just disappointing. But what was even more disappointing, and, you know, in a way surprising, I mean, Nigel Farage, we thought we knew the guy, and now he's been coming out with all sorts of ish, right? Because he came out in an article when all this happened, basically saying that the reason they didn't want him back was because he was right-wing, which basically just means he supports mass deportations, which is the biggest hypocritical point, considering how many times we've said on this channel when we've talked about the illegal migration crisis. The amount of times on the channel we've said we would not know about this if it wasn't for Nigel Farage in 2020 with his boats in Dover. The amount of, you can go back on my channel, the amount of times I have said this, right? To now have him come out in an article and basically basically say that they're not supporting a member of the Reform Party because he's right-wing, because he supports mass deportations. The irony and the hypocrisy of that is not lost on me, and should not be lost on you either. And not only that, but he came out and basically said he's been captured by the, what was it? Online radical right, which is absolutely insane. Rupert Lowe has been quite the active member on Twitter, X, sorry. You know, as a lot of people are, a lot of MPs are, right? Especially because, you know, it's a good platform, especially for free speech, and talking about the illegal migration problem. The fact that Nigel Farage is basically buying into the whole, well, he's far right narrative is, again, it is a bit shocking, actually, because this is the least likely person we would have thought to be bashing somebody down for talking about wanting mass deportations. And there was a video that came out with Rupert Lowe in an interview where he was basically talking about all the money that the NHS spend on translators for these illegal migrants that come in and, you know, can't speak English, and how much like of a waste of the taxpayers' money that is. But also talking about, you know, the standard stuff about the illegal migrants tend to have a very different view on women, and they're very culturally different to us, they're not integrating, and, you know, how we all have these sort of like hub communities of like all these migrants who just don't want to integrate into this country despite coming here to, you know, be part of Britain and whatever, which is pretty standard views. Again, it's stuff that we've heard even Farage talk about in the past, you know, about like the lack of integration and all this stuff. So again, it is really quite shocking and weird to now be seeing these people who were sort of the grassroots people a few years ago who were talking about this stuff when nobody else wanted to now, again, not letting one of their MPs back in the party based on some false allegations, which have, you know, been debunked by the people that they were allegedly coming from, right? Not only that, are now coming out and saying he's not allowed back in the party because of the views that they shared only a few years ago. Again, the mind boggles. And yet again, you know, I'll say this is very similar to what we saw with Ben Habib, because again, he's another one who's like a common sense politician who will come out and say the shit that needs to be said. And again, you know, he's another one who's been kicked out for similar reasons and for similar views, and, you know, they used similar excuses with him that he was like too far right and too radical. And obviously he's been great at coming out and basically saying, especially since all this happened, basically saying like, oh yeah, no, I feel for him, like he's a good friend of mine, it is Rupert Lowe, and, you know, I do feel for the guy because we're having similar treatment, and this is what they're doing to the people who care about the British people and are patriotic and, you know, follow conservatism in the way that it's supposed to be. Which again, you know, I hate to say, in a way I hate to say, is because obviously this is people's jobs and this is all very scandalous and a bit sad that this is what's happening to a party that was supposed to be the saviour, at least to some people, although again, I've never trusted them. But, you know, for me, as I said, it's has been incredibly vindicating because I called this from the very beginning, and it's also been funny to see all the meltdown of the fans, of the, you know, die-hard #1 fans of Reform UK, who again feed into the cancel culture and the echo chamber mentality, who are the people who probably wanted conservative politics back, and now that Reform is basically turning into like a centrist party, will still fall down and die for them. Again, I swear there will be people who will have vote Reform, Nigel Farage is God on their gravestones, right? And also, this is not an issue that just affects Westminster. Like, it's been interesting to see everything else that's come out kind of in light of this, in terms of regional branches of the Reform Party and, you know, regional offices and chairmen just being removed and then having branches closed down for absolutely no reason. I think it's the Stafford branch that put out like a statement on their Facebook group basically saying that their branch was going to be closed for apparently no apparent reason. It all had happened quite quickly, and their officers and their chairman had just been removed. They tried to write letters to Zia Yusuf and they were going unanswered. So again, you know, all this stuff's just being exposed, all the true colours are coming to light, and I, for one, love and hate to see it. Now obviously in light of this over the weekend, they lost like about 3,000 members. There's a live ticker on their website, and as much as it wasn't moving when all this was happening over the weekend, as soon as the team got back and like were going through their emails, apparently they were having like thousands of emails coming through, obviously from angry members who wanted their memberships to be cancelled and removed, completely deleted off the system in light of everything that's happening, which I think is very telling and is good that these people are speaking up and telling the party that this is ridiculous and, you know, that they shouldn't have done this, and they are absolutely disgusted by this treatment. And just when we think that this couldn't get any worse, by the way, they have now taken it a step further. Now, this is probably in conjunction with the press as well, and Lowe's had to come out and basically, again, deny this allegation, but they're trying to make out like he's got dementia, and that's another reason why they kicked him out, which, I mean, when all that came out, honest to God, a few things crossed my mind. First of all, using that as an insult is so disgusting, for one. But two, we spent 4 years with Joe Biden in the White House in America, and like, this is not, I don't understand. It all just seemed very weird to me, but like, you know what was going through my brain when I say that, right? You know, like when we spend 4 years with a guy who is clearly not capable, clearly struggling with some sort of disability in the White House for 4 years, who is on the liberal side, okay? And he managed to survive for so long, and yet now you're trying to make out that Rupert Lowe is in the same vein, so you're trying to like get rid of him because America didn't, I guess. Well, obviously they did in the election, but like it's all very bizarre. And again, it's really strange to see Reform UK basically come out and be a centrist party when their whole campaign, especially around the general election, was like, we are what the Tories aren't. And that's the only reason they did so well, was because, you know, people didn't want the Tories, but they also didn't want Labour, and like all the people who were gonna vote for the Tories but then wanted an alternative went to Reform UK. And as much as they are trying so hard to brush this all under the rug, right? And unfortunately they're not succeeding, because obviously we're seeing the bullshit now, at least the majority of people are. Obviously there are still the die-hard fans, and I'm sure there's going to be some in my comment section, there's going to be some in the comment section of all the channels that you watch, right? At the end of the day, people are starting to wake up to this, and as I said at the beginning of this video, and when I made my predictions for the year, I knew this was going to happen. Like I said, I really predicted this because I knew that this facade, it couldn't be kept up for any longer, and it clearly hasn't. And again, as much as it's sad to see this happen to like people's livelihoods, especially when they're getting accused of having dementia, which is obviously disgusting and, you know, should not be happening, that's like, it's a new low, right? But at the same time, again, I saw this happening from a mile off, and I knew this was gonna happen. So all this happening now is incredibly vindicating, and I'm glad in a way, because if you guys have been here for a while, you know, I am still of the idea that the Tories could come back, hopefully, right? It's gonna take us a few years. I'm not saying this is gonna happen overnight, absolutely not. We need a while to really get our heads together and think of a way to come back, but they are really still proving that if you want conservatism in the UK, the way to go is not Reform UK. The way to go is reforming the Conservative Party, right? And I've said this from the very beginning, and I want to know your guys' thoughts on that in the comments. If you have any particular thoughts about either what's been happening over the weekend with Rupert Lowe, all this stuff, or, you know, your opinion on the Conservative Party, regardless of what side of the spectrum you sit on, right? So I really, really want to know what you guys think about that. And I really want to be asking the question of, like, is this the end of Reform UK? Do we think they can recover from this? I mean, unfortunately, I do think they will recover a little bit, but people are still going to remember. And I was having some interesting conversations the other night on my exclusive Discord server, and people were saying that Lee Andrson is the next one to go. And this was a really interesting conversation that I had, and I'm glad that somebody brought it up, because if this is the case, and if someone else is going to go, like the next person to become really popular and be a victim to all this is going to be Lee Andrson, because wherever he's gone, like when he was in the Conservative Party, he was really popular, obviously for good reason, and I was a big fan of his at that time as well, and I've talked about that on the channel before. Like, I've met him, I have a picture with him at 2023's Conservative Party conference in Manchester, and he was a really, really nice guy, and he really supported like the young Conservatives, and he was basically, it was me and a group of my friends who were obviously all young Conservatives, and he was saying like, yeah, you guys are the future, like this is great, you know, he really enjoyed having conversations with us. He really wants, you know, young people to be that change and be the future that we need to see. At least that was kind of the attitude at the time, right? My views have slightly changed on him since then, after he jumped to Reform UK, as much as I mentioned on the channel at the time when it happened, it was not the biggest shock ever, right? Because it was already kind of being best buds with Richard Tice at the time, because obviously he was the leader / owner of it at the time, right? So it wasn't entirely surprising that he jumped to Reform UK. You know, everyone was saying that when he first got suspended over those comments about Sadiq Khan, which again, I want to say were completely valid and weren't in any way bad, really. They were just stating the truth, as he does, because he's Lee Andrson. But I mean, even then, you know, at that time, we were starting to see a little bit of like the disappointment in him come out, because when he became the deputy chairman of the Conservative Party, as I said at the time, again, there's previous episodes of the podcast where I talk about this, but we were all hoping that he was going to be the change that we needed to see, that he was going to call out Rishi Sunak and all of like the weirdos in the party and really kind of step up and be, you know, the voice for the members and the people that really needed that voice, and we didn't get that. And obviously he jumped pretty much the first chance he got. Well, it wasn't really the first chance he got, like he jumped after he was pushed, you know what I mean? But you know what I mean, like he wasn't as solid, like he was all words and no action, which is something we've seen with MPs far too many times. But with Lee it was even more disappointing, because he had been such a good voice previously, even before he became the deputy chairman. So yeah, when somebody mentioned that, like, oh well, the next person to go will be Lee, and yeah, that was a really interesting conversation, because Lee has had a history of jumping party as soon as someone's pissed him off in a party. We saw this when he always tells the story when he tells the story of how he got into politics, but he originally was a member of the Labour Party when he was a councillor before he became an MP, and they pissed him off because he didn't want to read the works of Karl Marx and wasn't interested, and they basically told him to fuck off, so he did, to the Tories. Like, true story, like what happened, right? Like that's the story he always tells. And obviously he went to the Conservative Party, and then when he got suspended from the Conservatives, again, he shouldn't have been suspended, but he did, he went over to Reform UK, and there is part of me now that thinks of when that happened, that like, did they suspend him because they already knew he was getting too buddy-buddy with Reform UK, so they just thought, fuck it, we might as well, because he's not really with us anymore. Did they just kind of like give up on him in a way? You know, that's another way to think of it, I suppose. But yeah, when everyone's saying like, I think he's the next one to go, which, as I say, I could see happening, especially, well, I mean, he supported the Rupert Lowe thing. Obviously he signed, because he's chief whip of the party, so of course he signed the statement basically saying all these allegations have come out about Rupert Lowe, we've suspended him, we've removed his whip, all this stuff, you know, it's like, it's all very sad, yada yada, which is the sentiment that was echoed by Richard Tice in that interview as well. So at the moment he's on their side, but I could see him becoming the next popular one and then getting kicked out. And the question really is, and this was the conversation I was having, was where's he gonna go? Where is he gonna go? Because he can't really repeat his pattern of behaviour if there's no other party that is really gonna represent, I guess, what he's claimed to believe in. And this is when people were saying, oh well, he might go to UKIP. Now, as much as we would laugh about that maybe a few years ago, not gonna lie, and I talked about this, I don't know if it was, I think it was in a short, but they were at a protest, I think, was it Manchester, a few weeks ago. I think it was like a pro-Palestine protest, I think, where they were basically like the anti-side of it, basically pro-deportations, anti-illegal immigration, anti-Islamist, that kind of thing. And the guy was doing a really good job. Again, I think I made a short about this when I found out about it. But it has been really interesting to see UKIP sort of make a name for itself again. I mean, obviously it's been a bit of a, a bit like the Lib Dems, it's been a bit of a no-name party, just like a really small party with no real recognition over the past kind of had a surge around the Brexit referendum, didn't it? Because they were voting leave. At least that's what they were advocating for. But yeah, I think it was really interesting to see them now kind of rise up a little bit, so it might be interesting to see kind of the rise of UKIP and then in the coming months, I think, which again would be actually really interesting to maybe see in terms of like policy and ideas, and maybe support as a result of that, UKIP make a return. Again, anything could happen at this point, you know, literally anything could happen, but I mean, I'd support that. I'd support, you know, the rise of UKIP as long as they were trustworthy and not dodgy and like coming up with like good policies. Perhaps like that's where we should be going, I don't know. Again, this is all interesting questions and I want to know what you guys think about that in the comments as well. Again, that was a really interesting conversation to have because we don't normally hear UKIP being talked about nowadays, but now we are, you know, at least in the past, and like now they are starting to become a name again, which again is really interesting to see and would be really good if they're coming up with the right ideas and then trying to implement that way that Reform UK clearly isn't capable of doing. But again, I just want to say, I called this from a mile away, and I've said this for a while now, and again, there have been the naysayers and they're going to still be the naysayers, because unfortunately with the echo chamber kind of mentality that Reform UK has been cultivating from the beginning, but even more now that everything that, you know, has come out, there are still going to be people who die hard support them. And as much as they've lost a few thousand members recently after everything's come out, I think the more that things come out and the more this scandal escalates and the more that people start to speak out about this, because this has happened twice now, as I say, the first with Ben Habib, now this. So it will be interesting to truly see if this is going to be their downfall, if maybe the opinion polls start to dip a little bit, but really this is also the time for the Conservative Party in Kemi, please Kemi, to come up with some kind of action plan, some kind of policy, some kind of like, we're gonna come back and this is how kind of plan. And I, as a diehard young Tory, not diehard, but I'm still a young Tory, kind of faithful young Tory, I would love to see that. I would really love to see some kind of progress and a reason to be proud to be a young Tory. I mean, it was interesting that Emily Hewitson was tweeting about this, especially when everything first came out, and like the day after and everything, the morning after, she was all like, for the first time in ages it's not felt shameful to be a young Tory and being a Conservative member. And I was like, girl, I feel you. I absolutely feel you on that one. Who, by the way, if you haven't met her in person, she is lovely. She's a lovely person. I've met her a few times, both kind of at Conservative Party conference and like outside conference as well, and she's a lovely person. But yeah, no, it has felt, again, quite vindicating to see this all go down, and I'm sure the more that things come out, and, you know, again, it will be really interesting to see just how much more proud we can be of being Conservative members, like, a little bit, just because we're seeing the downfall of Reform UK, which me, as well as a few others, have seen coming from a mile off. So yeah, you know, as I've said a few times about this episode, I want to know what you guys think about this in the comments, because this could really be a turning point, and I hope that it is, but we're gonna have to see how the wind changes, okay? So yeah, I want to know what you guys think. Has your support changed? Were you a Reform supporter who has now resigned their membership? Are you thinking about going towards UKIP? Are you reigniting your faith in the Conservative Party? I want to know all of what you guys think in the comments about this, because like I said, this could be a turning point. And, you know, for those of you who, like me, also saw this coming from a mile off, let's celebrate our prediction skills in the comments section down below. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This has been absolutely crazy. I really hope that we see some kind of change and justice is brought. I'm getting black lipstick on my teeth. Yeah, I really hope we see some kind of change with this, because this is what we really needed as a country. When shit like this is exposed, it is really a good thing, because the last thing we want in politics, especially when we're looking for like a new party to support or like new figures, right? The last thing we want is more corruption and more lies and more deceit, and unfortunately that is what the Reform Party seems to be continuing to serve us, right? So again, let me know all your thoughts in the comments. If you have any further predictions, like if Lee Andrson's going to be the next one to go and how they're going to do it, how they're going to treat him in the similar way, let's leave it all in the comments. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to know anything about the makeup side of things, like, I normally mention this at the beginning, but I always link all the products that I've used in the description. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you like the vibe, if you like this channel, if you like me, if you like this format, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my further episodes, on my shorts where I cover breaking news. Again, let me know what all your thoughts in the comments. I hope you're having a good day. Pray for all the die-hard supporters, all of the brainwashed gremlins I mentioned before who were gonna have it put on their gravestones. Pray for them. Let's put all those prayers in the comments, and I will see you guys in my next video.